Okay, so now over to our guest speaker. Lou Gerlach is an inquirer, an IB educator, podcaster, content creator, and upcycling enthusiast. She's very passionate about the PYP and has worked in IB authorized schools in Cologne, Germany, in Dubai in the UAE, and in Houston, Texas. For 20 years, Lou has been crafting learning, challenging misconceptions, making relevant connections to everyday life, and connecting to significant global issues. These roles have shaped her definition of learner-driven education and how to challenge the status quo about content delivery. Lou is the founder of ThinkChat, an educational consultancy firm that supports curriculum development that is agentic, playful, and conceptual. Lou, a very warm welcome from the entire Pune PYP Network. We thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate your time. Over to you,
Thank
Lou.
you. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm going to share my screen now. Brilliant. Okay, so for this session, what we're going to talk about is looking at local and global context. And what does that mean? And how do we make it applicable to our students in our practice? So as we know, this year you guys are focusing on the approaches to teaching, and we're going to look at the overall standard that teachers use local and global contexts to establish the relevance of their curriculum. But oftentimes, even I have struggled of how do I make that happen? So we're going to attempt to do that today so that you have some strategy that you can apply with your students right away. So for this to work, my friends, I need you to think like an explorer. And what that means, well, ultimately, you have a definition in your mind of what an explorer looks and feels and does in their everyday life. So this is what I want you to do, is I want you to think about what is an explorer in relation to curriculum development, right? How are you going to become more of an explorer as an educator within the PYP? So we're going to do this through an interactive tool. Oh, wait, my interactive tool didn't come up. So what I want you to do right now is in the chat, if you guys could put in, what do you think is an explorer in the PYP? So what's your definition of an explorer? Oh, I'm seeing someone put an inquirer, a learner. Oh, someone who wants to find out more. Enthusiastic. Oh, I love this. Courageous content creator. Absolutely. Someone who tries something new, finds new horizons. A risk taker. Ooh, this is really interesting. A quest to know something different. Someone that takes a risk on subject that he or she doesn't know about. Absolutely. A wanderer, a risk taker, an innovator. Absolutely. So thinking about that in regards to what it means to be an explorer, I want us to think about this as we go through of unpacking through the lens of exploration. We're going to start to delve into the actual practice. So there's a standard, and then how do we make that doable in our practice? We're going to look at how teachers can ensure that there are clear examples of connections to local and global contexts in the curriculum. So what the heck does that mean? All it means is that we can clearly see examples of how you're connecting to the local and global community within and while you're teaching your content. So how do we make that happen? And this is something that I've been thinking a lot about. But first, let's reflect on our own practice. What are we doing already that's helping our students to explore the world around them? What are the magical things that we are creating to make that happen? So what we're going to do this time is we're going to engage with a Padlet. So here is a QR code if you want to use it on your phone. Okay. And if you don't want to use it on your phone, I'm actually putting it into the chat right now. Hold on one sec. So I've put the link into the Padlet for you. I mean, into the chat. And what I want you to do is on this Padlet, I want you to just go on this Padlet here. And I want you to, with the plus symbol, just put an example of how you're exploring to your local community. What are you doing to get children to explore to their local community or also to the greater world? What are you doing already? Oh, I love that. Making connections with the SDGs. They're fabulous. Okay, wow, it's coming in. Looking at local issues, field trips, going into the local community, international mindedness. Ooh, peer mediators. I'm loving this. So many ideas from this group. I like this virtual and physical SDG field trips. Exploring local issues. That's so key. Exploring cultural celebrations, looking at guest speakers, case studies, so many ideas. And right here within our group, we already have a lot of ideas. So my suggestion is that we have to move on from this, but maybe keep a copy of this Padlet because now here's a great database of ideas of how to explore beyond the local community or just the content. So now what we're going to do is we're actually going to go into a possible strategy of how you can make this with very little prep really meaningful in your practice. So I was struggling myself is how do we break this down for our learners? So when I'm trying to get them to connect to the local and global context, I'm first asking them, well, me, what how do I feel about the issue? How is this related to me in my life? And that's where I start first. Then the we, where we're looking at, well, how do we in our school, our local community, within our maybe city or our district or even our state, depending on age appropriateness, how do we deal with this issue? And then us looking at where are other people in the world and how are they exploring this issue in a different way that we might not have considered before. So we're going to explore and do just one strategy this time, is we're going to look at a Harvard Project Zero thinking routine called projecting across distance. I'll be honest, it's one of my favorites because it really scaffolds the process of helping children make local and global connections. So we're going to go through the process, but I first want to share what the steps are because we are going to be we're going to have certain stepping stones based on the ages in which you teach. So the first one is thinking about looking at your we look at an issue and we first look at, well, how does your family or your local community um, feel or deal with that issue? Then looking at another city or town within your country, then you go to a country east or west of yours and where people may do or think differently than you, and how do they solve that issue? And then you go north and south, and same parameters of where people might think differently. And so we're going to look at this idea through the notion of beliefs and values. So beliefs and values is generally, as we know, explored in the PYP. I don't think it's limited to, but it's often explored through the transdisciplinary themes of who we are and how we express ourselves. But how do we go really deep with beliefs and values with our learners? And so I thought about thinking about you and my audience of thinking about how do we connect with things that are part of our local heritage with our learners. So thinking about this, remember the first step is does my family and my community celebrate certain beliefs and values? So when I'm looking at this right here is when you're thinking about your family, your local community, they impact a lot about your own beliefs and values that shape your life. So, what are some beliefs and values that shape your life, that govern how you live, that you'd be willing to share within the chat? Oh, I like that. Less is more. Absolutely. Honesty. Wonderful. Mm, compassion, prayer and patience, respect, empathy, being open minded, respecting others, love, belief, absolutely, integrity. And so much of our world and how we view the world comes from others. Beliefs, I love that. Believe in yourself, quality should matter, not quantity. So, thinking about these big ideas, how do we then share them with our learners? And so, the first step is bringing an idea of belief and value to something that you know that they're going to experience. So, when I'm looking at this image here, what does your family and your local community think about this event? Right? And so, what I want you to do is, I want you to think of this event here that shares about beliefs and values, right? And what we're going to do is we're going to interact with it by using a Slido. And how you use a Slido, if you haven't used one, many of us have, is that just scan that QR code, or if you want to use a computer, go slido.com and plug in that code. So how does your family and local community think about that event that we just shared the image of? Oh, I love that prosperity. Puja meditation, positivity, celebration. A lot about celebration, conquering evil and spreading love, and I love that. Traditions and celebrations. Celebrate light and love across the community. We're all different, but live in the same world. Going from darkness to light. So many ideas of what this. Look at that, and the repeating ideas that keep coming up are celebration, right? Evil in regards to culture, tradition, togetherness. These are repeating ideas that keep coming up. As we're thinking about this singular event. So, as we know that with celebrating Diwali, which we know is coming up, is that how do we know what's local and global for our early learners? Because oftentimes I know for myself, as being a coordinator, I pushed heavily for local and global connections within my pre-K and K, even first and second grade. But then we had to step back and say, is that developmentally appropriate for a child who doesn't even know who they are? What's a friend, what makes up a family. And so thinking about if you were unpacking the concept of Diwali and that tradition, and first, our local connection is, what is Diwali, right? What is it? Why do we celebrate it, right? And then looking at global would be, well, okay, how do we celebrate Diwali in my city, right? First, we have our school community. Are people celebrating it slightly differently, and why? Um, and in my city, and I'll be honest, usually this age, they can't get beyond their city because going to the district or state level is too big because they don't have a frame of reference. So thinking about staying within my city, that might be pretty global to them. And then as we advance into first and second grade, if you notice, we're now starting to apply the concepts of beliefs and values. We're asking students, why is Diwali an important holiday? And how do we show our beliefs and values? And if you notice, their local connection, their local context is, how is Diwali celebrated? It's the global context for pre-KK. So it's building up, it's scaffolding up. And so they're looking at, how is it celebrated in my surrounding areas? But then they're also then looking at, do all states celebrate in the same way? And what are those similarities and differences? So now we're getting a little bit deeper in our thought process. So let's say you have students who are ready to go beyond this, because this right here, oftentimes with this projecting across distance, it might be too much for your early years, and they might just stop here, and that's valid. But let's say we have students who are ready to go on. So projecting across distance is comparing and contrasting different issues. Ours is beliefs and values. So we started with Diwali. Now we're going to another city or town in your country. So in the chat, does anyone have an idea of what is this belief and value that is happening also within India? New moon situate, okay, lamp of knowledge, Buddha, seeing enlightenment. Okay, so many ideas here. Okay, so as I was researching about different beliefs and values, also within India, I was really interested in the Sala Puja Day, of looking at this Buddhist holiday, of looking that commemorates the establishment of Buddhism, right? Also Dharma Day, right? And looking at how this celebrates another belief system, but still within the same area. Still, and why do we have such contrasting belief systems, and what are their individual importances, right? Because we're talking about beliefs and values and trying to embrace international mindedness as well. So now we're going to go to the third example of this. So thinking about into the chat, now we're going to a country east or west of our country, where people might think differently. How is this connected to beliefs and values, do you think? What do we think? Korean Light Festival, someone said. Celebration light, welcoming of springtime, togetherness. Light as a common thread, celebrating spring, Japanese New Year, diversity, embrace enlightenment and prosperity. All right, so many ideas there. And what's really fascinating as we're getting students to look at this idea of beliefs and values is that there is a festival, and it is in the springtime. It's coming up in May of 2024. It's Yeongdong-ho, and it is the name for the Lotus Lantern Festival. And children create lanterns that they celebrate the birth of Buddha. And it's been going on for over thousand years. And the entire country lights up with these colorful lanterns to be able to symbolize enlightenment, which someone mentioned in the chat, which is awesome. So here's the last one, a country north or south of you, of where they might think differently. What country and what do you think is the purpose of this belief and value? All right, someone said a lantern festival in Germany. Light is a hope and a ray. Another lantern festival, March to the Light, light, prosperity, growth, celebration. Okay. Heading towards knowledge, wisdom. Okay, so as many of you were able to determine that this is in Germany, where children engage in November, generally around November 11th, where they make lanterns and they go into a nighttime procession where they carry these paper lanterns. I did this for many years when I began my PYP journey in Cologne, Germany, and they're usually in primary school, and it's in celebration of the life of Saint Martin, who symbolizes the holy light that keeps the darkness away. He encountered a beggar and took half of his coat and gave it to them. And so this is, as we're going into the darkness of winter, how can we remember that light? So a big part of our practice with the approaches to teaching in this one is teachers encourage students to transfer their conceptual understanding to unfamiliar texts. To show 4 different cultures and how they believe, that's not going to transfer and stay with our students. What's going to stay is that when we ask our students, what do you notice are the similarities and differences between these beliefs and values? So we've gone over 4 different types of beliefs and values that are around the world. And what are some of the similarities and differences that you notice about them? Okay, a lot of people are putting light and prayers into the chat. So my question is, why the light? If you're saying that light is a similarity, what does it represent? Illuminating lives, togetherness, hope, happiness. I like that. Knowledge. Enlightenment. Brilliant. So when we're thinking about this, you could then bring in regards to other holidays that represent light. And the reason why I love this visible thinking routine is because it's helping children to see commonalities of things that normally would not be deemed as common, right? And trying to get them to make connections, because the whole purpose of local and global context is to get children to make connections that even though we might do things differently, ultimately, majority of the things that we do in this world, issues that we have to solve are universal. Right. And this visible thinking routine helps and scaffolds the process for our learners so they're able to understand it and be able to make application. So with that being said, do you have any questions about it? Or any other questions about local and global contexts? Stop sharing my screen so I
Please
can
feel free
see
to
your.
raise your hand or put a question in the chat. That would be great.
Okay, I love that. How can you incorporate action? So, in regards to action, so I chose beliefs and values because oftentimes people equate beliefs and values to something that is done, right? But and it's often limited in regards to maybe one beliefs and values. So in regards to like this engagement about different belief systems, about action could be, well, how then, as you are seeing the commonalities of these different belief systems, what can you do to change your, to open your mind to be more respectful and honor the different ways that people think and feel? Right? So what can you do in your life? So now we're bringing international mindedness into the conversation of being more open to the different ways that of how people believe and act and do, because that's a big part of this process. And then bringing in to make that tangible of saying, I wonder what learner profile you could possibly demonstrate in that action. I wonder what skill or the ATL that you could be demonstrating to make that happen. I'm always trying to weave back and forth. Absolutely. You could talk about social skills, how, like, what type of skills that you need in order to be able to interact with others in different belief systems and be respectful. So, how do we make young learners understand beliefs and values? Well, first, we have to break that down. We have to break down the concept. Like, I'm not going to go into doing this until I've already broken down what a belief and a value is. So, a belief obviously is something that you believe to be true based on observations, right? But then, what is a value? And if you look in the dictionary of what a value is, it's a truth that governs the way in which you act. And so I would be asking the young learners, well, what's something that you believe is to be true? And then I would be breaking down, well, what's something that's really true to you that that even if someone else told you that it wasn't true, you'd still believe it. And that's how then you break it down and showing some examples and then building up. This is why going global doesn't necessarily mean going around the world, because they have no frame of reference of where I am currently. And so that all of that has to be broken down. Um, So I'm looking here. How can you connect this to science? Absolutely. So I'm looking at, in regards to science, how I would do this is you could look at any science. So for instance, let's say one that I often tell children to do, like we learn about, let's say, in PYP, we learn about life cycles, right? And so we learn about life cycles about different organisms or water cycle, any type of cycle. I would have them look at, we're going to look at the life cycle of, let's say, of a frog, okay? And look at that as a standalone. Like, what is a life cycle? First, get that, and then go into with science of, I wonder what are the common types of frogs, for instance, that are in our local area, and look at the attributes of them and get children to recognize that let's examine these different types of frogs. Do they all have the same kind of life cycle? And then as you're projecting across distance, so we're looking at east and west of us, north and south of us. So like where I live, I split my time from Houston, Texas to Brussels, Belgium. If I were currently where I am in the States, I'd be going down, let's say, into the Amazon and looking at the outward features of, let's say, a poison dart frog. Does the physical characteristics change what a life cycle looks like? And no. And so that's a huge concept for a child. And so getting multiple examples with any content and putting it in, it really helps to show that we're majority of the ideas are viewed the same no matter where they come from. So looking at also connected to your understanding of a concept, incorporating it to different subject focus. I don't know. I need some clarification on that. Whoever asked that question, KA. Is also connected to your understanding of a concept and incorporating into different subject focus. I don't quite understand what that question's asking, but I'd love to answer it for you if you'd like to add some clarification. Okay. All right. In regards to even if so there's a comment in the chat, understand that wood frogs do hibernation where normal frogs don't, but it doesn't matter how they rest. There's going to still be a cycle, right, where they're born, they progress through life, and then they die. And so the ultimate thing about projecting across distance, really at the end of it all, is helping children recognize that we all do things differently, but majority of what we do are the same. And what we're trying to do is build generalizations to get them to understand that there are features that are different, and you can use it with any content: social studies, science, math, language arts, the arts, PE, of in regards to like sports, for instance, with PE teachers looking at, okay, well, you have ball games. Well, what kind of ball game do we play here? And you're looking across the world and how it's universal. And why that's important is because that leads to conceptual understanding of children. Once they start to see that, I'm starting to make generalizations about the world, that, oh, it doesn't matter what a frog looks like, where it lives, it goes through the same life cycle. That's a big understanding for a child. And so as we're able to build those types of understandings, then they're able to make deeper connections across the curriculum. Are there any other questions?
I think there's a question from Chitrali about how can younger learners approach a task interculturally, one from their own local perspective and one by adopting a global perspective.
Okay. Well, I think, the idea that would be explored is the issue of, not issue, but the concept of culture. What is culture? What makes up culture? And breaking that down. And what are the different parts that make up my culture? And then looking at, well, does how I view culture in my part of India look the same in another part of India? And culture, those different facets, it's not just the clothes we wear, the food we eat, it's our beliefs and values, those things that make up our belief systems, the way that we operate. And so when you're getting young learners, thinking about young learners, they're going to just be looking at the tangibles and looking at, do the people in the southern part of India look differently than the people in the northern part? And then looking at from culture of, I wonder what makes, let's say if we were to do the same cultures, what makes Koreans, why do they look so different than us? Right? And why do the way that their culture is celebrated, why is that different, but are there some similarities there? It's the same process of breaking it down so that young learners, and a lot of visuals help with this. But I also recommend that maybe you show 2 visuals per each place you go so that they don't get overwhelmed. But using visual representation and talking about it and not being as formulaic or more, I hate to say it, like step by step. And I also personally, like I said in the beginning, I would probably not, in regards to building their global perspective, our young learners don't even know where they are. So can they build up to where America is, or where London is? They might know of London, but they might not. They don't have that concept of geography. So how can we then help them to understand within the context of even just in our country? What are the diversity within our country, but that we're all the same as citizens of that country? I know this is a lot in a very short period of time, but if you ever want to chat outside of this, I'm on social media. I'll be honest. One thing that's a true treasure for me is I love podcasting, and one of the strongest networks is in your country. Every time that I engage with people, that live in India, that are from India, there's such a passion. And that's why when Carla reached out to me, I was like, yes, I will definitely participate in sharing with you, because I have found that there's just a fire within PYP schools and beyond within India that I've not seen elsewhere, to be honest. And so it's been an absolute delight to be with you, and to share with you and to learn from you. And feel free to contact me. And hopefully we can have other chats together.
Great, thank you so much, Lou. Any last questions from anyone? I'm not seeing anything in the chat or any hands raised. I think, Lou, you've given us so much to think about. And I can't wait to project across the distance a little bit further. That's a real treasure for us to kind of explore further. So thank you so much for your time today. And I think everyone, we can maybe give a virtual round of applause and see who we can see. And we'll go over to our group starting at 10 o'clock. Thank you so much, Lou. We really appreciate your time.
You're welcome. Bye. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.